Deidre Montague, and welcome to the State of Black Women series, where we will explore different topics that have a major impact on Black women. This is the second episode of the series, where we will be discussing the role of mental health and its impact on Black women with two special guests. Next up, I'll be in conversation with Dr. Tasha Rose, a licensed professional counselor who specializes in women's trauma with a focus on psychotherapy and spiritual counseling. Then I will speak with Reverend IRENE MONROE, a sought after preacher and speaker, about the role faith has on Black women's mental health. You won't want to miss these powerful conversations. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm Deidre Montague, your host for the State of Black Women series. Today's episode will focus on mental health and its impact on Black women. Our first guest is Dr. Tasha Rose, a licensed professional counselor who practices in the Hartford, Connecticut area and is the owner of Let's Talk About Counseling Services. Let's take a listen.
Thank you so much for letting me talk to you. So, Miss Tasha, for those who may not know who you are, can you just tell us who you are and what you do as a clinical therapist?
Okay. My name is Dr. Tasha Rose. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am in the Hartford area and I practice general counseling, which is talk therapy. However, I am the owner of Let's Talk About It Counseling Services, and I'm located in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I have infused faith-based practices with psychotherapy, and I have allowed that to help me with women in trauma. I have a extensive background working with women and trauma and children in trauma. And most recently, over the last 2 years, I've decided that I wanted to work directly with adults, with helping them get through the trauma that they have and they've incurred during their lifespan, and really just help them understand how to have healthy coping skills and understand symptoms and not just write things off as being attacked by the devil, having bad luck on their lives, blaming themselves for things that they have encountered due to their upbringing, and really just helping them to understand that understanding the trauma, understanding the symptoms of the trauma, and then understanding how to heal from the trauma, they will have healthier and happier lives. So that is what I do as a clinical therapist.
Thank you for that. I really wanted to talk about on your end, on a general level, what are some of the issues on a mental health level that your Black women clients have been facing when it comes to trauma, and how are you able to help them work through that?
I would say one of the biggest things that happens or that I've noticed with the women of color that come through my door is childhood trauma with their parent, particularly their mothers. I have noticed that many of the women that come through the door, they have deep rooted trauma by their moms. Many of them either had mothers who, in some sense, resented them. I have encountered about, I would say, more than half of my women that have come through my door have had issues with mom comparing them, parent leaving them to parent other children, having men in the home that abused them, mothers who had to work so much that they had no idea what was going on with their young girls. And those things have really impacted the way that many of the women that I work with live their lives, with picking spouses, how they take care of their children, how they interact with other women, how they interact in the world. Many of them have become very numb. They don't understand pretty much how that trauma impacted them as adult women today. And so, what I have done and what I do with them is I have them write letters. I start off with them writing a letter to their mother, being 100% transparent, because many times the women come in and yes, they tell me these things happen, but they're really big to say, well, I forgive my mom. She didn't know any better. And I have to allow them to be honest with who they were as a child and actually help them to understand that they didn't deserve that treatment, regardless of what their mother had gone through, what their mother knew or what they didn't know. At the end of the day, it's important to at least acknowledge that you were not, you shouldn't have had to go through that. And so a lot of the things that I do with them is have them write letters and then we discuss it. We do a little role play so that the women can get out what they want to say to their moms. And then I go back and forth with them depending on what I heard from the letter to try to help them set boundaries with their mothers moving forward or to forgive their mothers if their mothers have already passed on. So those things, that's one of the biggest things that I do with a lot of the women that come through. And then I also help them to see the symptoms that they believe that are like just who they are, but I try to show them the symptoms of that neglect or that abuse and how they live throughout their adult lives now, and really help them to heal through that by helping them to see that's a symptom of trauma, that's not really who they are, and that if they understand the trauma that they've been through and they start to heal through it, they will be able to actually see their real personalities and who they were actually created to be.
Thank you for that. You know, when you were talking about some of the symptoms that some of your women of color clients have taken on as personality traits, what are some of those symptoms that they take on and don't recognize right away that you have to show them?
Control. One of the things is control, being strong, argumentative over everything, taking things personally. I've had women come in and, right off the bat, they're like, that's just who I am. I got to make sure that people respect me. And I'm like, okay, but why is that so important? And I have to help them understand the reason why you fight so hard for someone to respect you is because you didn't feel seen when you were younger. You didn't feel like you had a voice. So now, as an adult, you feel like you got to constantly teach people how to treat you. And to be honest, we just need to make sure, as healthy individuals, we have to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And then I also bring in the faith base and understand that when you live the way that God wants you to live, people will either respect you on that level or God will remove them because you're living the way that you're supposed to. But that anger, always needing to have things their way, understanding that you can't always have things your way, and really take a moment to understand why you're fighting with someone just because they do it a way that you don't, or they've spoken to you in a way that you feel that it was disrespectful, but in reality, it might just have triggered you. That's why you now want to argue with these people because they've said something to trigger you. I have noticed that women come in and they're very guarded. They don't want to talk about their children. They don't want to acknowledge that some of their behaviors or their symptoms have caused their children now to pick up those same symptoms, and calling them out on bad behaviors such as the control, taking things personally all the time. I have also seen women, they come in and they'll have this way of saying, like, it's my way or the highway. And it's like, that's still a sense of control. And they're like, no, I don't have control issues. I'm like, yeah, you do. Because if someone comes in and they're trying to teach you something and you don't want to hear it, you automatically become offended or you push back. And that's a sense of control. So I try to teach them how those little behaviors, it is a sense of control. And that comes from how you were raised, the lack of support, the lack of empathy, the lack of intimacy that you had or you didn't have from your parent. So those are some of the things that I do see: the control, the anger issues, the argumentative behaviors, and pretty much wanting to feel like, they can do everything themselves.
Thank you so much for that. When you said that, it actually brought me to my next question. It reminds me of the strong Black woman, that whole stereotype of that's like kind of, I feel like from what I've researched is ingrained in our culture of like us having to like display signs of strength and caretaker qualities all the time and suppress our emotions. Is that something that you see like when you're working with your women of color clients, and how, and can you talk about how that can negatively impact our mental health, especially as women of color or Black women?
That's kind of like a loaded kind of question because when you really think about that strong, that is definitely like someone telling a black woman that they're strong is usually looked at as a positive, right? People look at that, they say, "Oh, you're so strong, you're so this, you're so that." And one of the things that I've tried to debunk with my clients is to try to teach them that being strong is not a badge of honor. That is something that was taught, that was for protection through some of the things that black women, especially if you go back to slave trade and you go back to even just being not, maybe not even being in slavery, but just from the moment of time where women always had to get things in order for the house. But to be honest, it wasn't about you being strong, like you got to handle everything, but that came from not having anyone else to depend on, or that came from protecting people, protecting their kids, or protecting what they had. But it's not really a badge of honor. That is really how a lot of women, they struggle from physiological issues like hypertension, heart disease, a lot of stress, anxiety. That is that I'm a strong woman. That's why many of us, we have so many ailments and we don't even know where it comes from, but we feel good when someone tells us that we're strong. And so I try to explain to women, why is it that you feel good about being strong when you're dying inside? I ask that question because it's like, what does that mean to you? You're going to take on everybody else's issues. You're going to try to take on everything and work it out and make it work, and you're not being cared for, you're not being protected, you're not doing the things that you need to do to stay healthy. So being strong is definitely something that many black women take as a honor, because when things in the world started to change and black women became single moms, or black women had to work and black women had to do all these things to take care of the community, their children, themselves, being strong meant disregarding how you felt in order to help someone else. And that became like, oh, she's a good person, she's a great woman. But in reality, it was like she didn't have a choice. And so, what I try to help women understand is who in your circle that you can receive help from, support. You need to build support systems so that you don't feel like you always have to be in control or you always have to be strong, because that will hurt you. That is going to harm you. You're going to not lose just people, you're going to lose who you are. Many black women have no idea who they are because they're too busy trying to be strong because someone told them that that's okay to be a strong woman, make sure everything is in order. But they have lost themselves because they never had a chance to really worry about themselves. So I really do try to help women to understand that it's not something to be excited about. That is something to really like stop and think and say, where does this come from? And is being strong, is it helpful for my psychological health? Is it helpful? Is it healthy for my physical health? Can I be strong and still take care of myself? And if the answer is no, then we need to work on where those things come from and how we can get through it so that you can be strong but also be healthy. Because right now, a lot of black women, they feel like their friends are strong or they're strong because they're doing all the things, but then if something happens to them, they end up in the hospital or they have some type of ailment. The first thing people say, she was such a strong woman. And it's like, she was such a strong woman because she didn't take care of herself. She didn't do all the things that she needed to do. And now she can't take care of herself. And she wasn't taught to ask for help and have a support system. So I really do try to help my clients build support systems, go to therapy, right? Take time out for themselves, learn how to say no, and understand that if someone asks you to do something that you really can't do and you tell them no and they get upset, then you need to reevaluate that relationship.
Well, thank you for that answer. In thinking about that, Black women and women of color, we don't only face high cultural expectations at times, but it seems like in doing research, we also are facing societal expectations. And when we do come in or try to be our full selves, sometimes that's misinterpreted. And one of the things that can negatively impact us, it seems, is the angry Black woman stereotype, especially like in work settings or in settings where we are often the only or the very few. And I was wondering if you could just talk about how that negatively has impacted Black women in their mental health having that stereotype of being an angry Black woman when they could just be trying to get their point across at work, or they're just trying to live life in this world that we live in.
So let's take it back just a little bit and understand that when we're talking about the angry Black woman, it really comes up when you're talking about work environments, working with Caucasian women or women who are not Black, who have not maybe experienced some of the things that many Black women have had to experience. And what has happened is a Black woman who is assertive, who is goal oriented, who really understands what it is that they want can be looked at by a white woman as being angry because that woman is not able to understand what that Black woman is trying to convey due to their own lack of cultural norms or understanding culture, their own lack of being in charge in any other realm in their life other than their work environment. And so they look at it like when a Black woman is being assertive or a Black woman is allowing herself to prove that like they know what they're doing, a white woman can become a little irritated because it's like, you shouldn't talk to me that way. It's still kind of like that inferiority type of complex. And so I do believe that sometimes Black women, they get that negative label because we're always trying to show that we can do these things and we have the abilities, and sometimes we have a better outlook on things because we've experienced things, but because we're Black or because maybe we don't have the same lifestyles, how we come across getting the things done or the job done, we're looked at as angry or you're fighting too much or just let it happen. And it's like, no, like I know my way is going to work. It's going to help the company. It's going to help my business. This is how I'm going to do it. And I believe that when you're passionate about something, sometimes you can be told that you're angry, but it's really just a passion and the ability to do something even if you're a woman. And so I think that a lot of Black women, they get that negative title due to the fact that they're passionate, they're very assertive about what they need and what they want. And if they're able and capable of doing something and they're being passed around from it, that does become a little bit frustrating. And so when they voice their concerns, because white women or white culture don't always like to hear that they're being prejudiced or racist, it comes off as they're just angry. It's just an angry Black woman. No, we're letting you know that you're not being fair. You're not seeing the full picture. Because I said it in a tone that may be harsh to you, you feel like I'm angry and it's not. I'm just telling you what my point of view is. And I shouldn't have to lower my voice in order for you to understand that I'm not arguing with you or I'm not trying to be mean to you. So that's that piece when I hear about the angry Black woman in corporate or in the workplace. But then in community, again, it goes back to passion. It goes back to Black women being tired, right? And then still having to push through. It goes right back to that whole thing of I'm a strong Black woman. So sometimes something might happen and that woman might have lost everything that day and now have to go in and fight something else. And they come off as being angry, but in reality, it's just they're tired, they're hurt, they're trying to get things done and they don't have the emotional capability of doing it, but people are still pushing them. They're still needing things from them. They're still telling them that they're strong. And this woman is no longer strong. She's just weak. And so it comes off as anger. It comes off as disrespect. In reality, it really is just this woman saying, I can't do it anymore. So it's like a twofold. Some people get it in the community as angry Black women, and then some people get it on the jobs as angry Black women. But I think it all depends on the fact that Black women have a lot on their shoulders and they take on a lot because they have to do so much more than a woman of Caucasian or non-Black. So it is really, really important to understand that that label has been placed on Black women as a negative, but no one really takes a moment to understand where that energy is coming from on why that label even was attached in the first place.
Thank you for that, Dr. Tasha. And my last question is on self care. It does seem that as Black women, we're facing community standards that we're looked to uphold, and we're also facing societal standards that we're looked on to uphold. And that can take, as you were saying, a physical toll on us. It can take a mental toll on us. How can we, in a healthy way, practice self-care as Black women?
Well, one of the things that I do, and as a woman of faith, is I pray. I'm really big with learning the Bible for myself, having a close relationship with God, understanding my own trauma, understanding the things that trigger me, understanding the things that I need to work on every single day. Because I don't care how much you feel like you're good, every day there is going to be something that's going to test you, right? And so I'm really big with prayer in the morning and meditating, pray during the afternoon, like on a break, and then prayer at night before going to bed. That's something that I do to try to keep myself sane and not to personalize everything. It's a protection that I put on myself and ask God to protect me and lead me and guide me, because I used to be that woman that wanted to be so strong and wanted to get everything done, and it took a toll on my body. I do a lot of alone time. I take walks. Every day I take at least a 20-minute walk. I sit and I journal. A lot of people think getting your hair done, getting your nail done, and things like that, those are like self-care rituals. I really don't look at getting your hair done and your nails done as self-care. I think it's maintenance. Getting your hair done and your nails done, you're usually around other energies and people, and sometimes you're not really focusing on yourself. You find yourself having or helping someone else in a situation. People ask questions, they're talking to you. That's not real self care. So I don't look at getting my hair done or my nails done as self care. I do give myself like facials, massages are self care. I like to swim. I'm not the best swimmer, but I love the water. Taking a swim as much as you can, because water does relax your body. I do acupuncture because I feel like that's an opportunity as well to release stress and to just relax. I say no a lot more. I didn't used to say no, and learning how to just be in an intimate space with yourself. That's just like sitting, might be sitting in silence, reading a book, watching a funny movie, but anything that you are not doing to maybe help someone else or being in the presence of another person. That is what I would say to do for self care. And that is how I practice self care.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Rose. I really appreciate it. It was such a pleasure speaking with you.
Welcome back. I'm Deidre Montague, your host for the State of Black Women series. Today's episode will focus on mental health and its impact on Black women. Our next guest is Reverend IRENE MONROE. She is an African American lesbian feminist, public theologian, speaker, and preacher. She is also one of the hosts for the GBH podcast, All Rev'd Up. Let's take a listen. Thank you so much again, Reverend IRENE. It is such a pleasure to talk to you. You know, Reverend IRENE, Black women, we're no stranger to faith. According to Pew Research Center, a larger share of women, more than men, read scripture multiple times a day. African immigrants are much more likely to attend religious services weekly than African immigrants from the Caribbean or U.S. born Black adults. Women and college educated adults are more likely than men and those without a college degree, respectively, to attend on a weekly basis. Can you just talk about the positive relationship between faith and Black women and how it can help us navigate the difficult political and social climate that can take a toll on our mental health?
Sure. I deal with this all the time because as clergy, we are first responders. And what my job is to really highlight to folks who come to me or parishioners to show how faith can help them with their mental illness. And I always see that integral relationship between Black women and their faith here. And we're seeing more and more, it seems to override racial ethnicity, whether you're from the Caribbean, from the motherland, or here, the intersection of faith and mental wellness. It seems to me, I've noticed that it doesn't matter whether you are educated or not or what profession you're in. But what I try to do is educate clergy about mental health, to end the stigma, get people the appropriate mental health support they need and deserve. But faith, it gives us a lens to see a setback, as I say, as a setup for a comeback. I mean, faith is such a cornerstone of resilience and empowerment that has sustained us for generations. Trauma, the persistence of racism, health disparity, both historically and currently contribute to what I see is our enduring legacy of faith and spirituality. It lowers our stress. I know it does that for me, anxiety and depression. When I'm counseling, that you don't rely solely on religion over psychotherapy. I mean, in our culture, I come from that culture myself, that you take your concerns to the altar for prayer, you take it to Jesus. And so mental health in general, whether we're male or female, in my opinion, has been on the down low in many of our communities for so long, because we see it as a personal weakness, a failing in faith. So you're less likely to see someone go to a mental health professional, a therapist, a psychiatrist. But I am seeing more and more Black women than I see of Black men debunking the shameful stigma that comes with it. I'm very happy to see this, because, like I said, they can seek God further in their search of becoming more aware of their mental health. I tell them that it enlarges their understanding of God's active role in their mental wellness. I always say it's fine to seek God in prayer, but it's also important to see a therapist, get diagnosed, get medicine to support you having a full and enriching life. Mental health awareness is important, and faith becomes integral in that. It really does.
Faith allows us also to connect with community. According to Pew Research, women and older Black adults tend to engage in prayer groups, scripture study groups, and other diverse ranges of spiritual practices at higher rates than men and younger Black adults. And they're also more likely to hold leadership roles in their congregations than men. How do you think that engaging in a faith community positively impacts women in their mental health?
Prayer really invokes a relaxation response here. It's a de-stressor. It's a ritual. It helps us to find healthy ways to deal with stress, as opposed to, say, alcohol. It's more likely to take us to not only being in community, but to exercise, to eat better, to understand that our bodies are our temple, a way of worshiping God. So I find that you will find more women taking that route and not stigmatizing it, not seeing it as lesser than in terms of being strong. With Black women, we always have to carry this mantle. I call this bridge called our back. You know, Zora Neale Hurston said that we were the mules of the world, but we're taking much more healthier notions about our full being, and spirituality as well as mental health are intricately tied to each other.
Speaking of community, data is showing us that more and more people are leaving the church. Pew Research is reporting that Black Americans, who are demographically the most religious in the country, are turning away from organized religion in large numbers. They report that in one decade, 11% fewer Black people considered themselves Christians, and 7% more claim to be unaffiliated with religion. Another study found that young Black adults are less religious and less engaged in Black churches than older generations. However, Essence.com says that they may be looking for spiritual connections elsewhere for a variety of reasons, such as having bad experiences in places of worship, not feeling like Black women's experiences are represented enough in church leadership, and becoming dissatisfied because churches are institutions and institutions are slow to change. What would your advice be for them on connecting with faith after these unfortunate situations, especially that probably have had a negative toll on their mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, being ordained within the church, being called to the church here. There are other factors that contribute to it as well. I think that as more LGBT plus kids come out, we're no longer, because I'm in that demographic group, going to be on the down low about our spirituality. I always say that gay people love Jesus just as much as straight people. We're not children of a lesser God, but of the same God. You can find spirituality and church other than with the brick and mortar. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that Jesus said that where two or three of us gathered, there I am. But what I mean by that is that we're finding more storefront gatherings, people who have churches in their homes. People find spirituality. I used to run a group called Gospel Aerobics, and it was amazing. I was doing the intersection of faith, body, and wellness. And we would always read scripture that integrate the three. And I got more people, I'm going to be honest with you, that would come on a Saturday, that would come on Sunday morning. So because they were looking for something that was much more holistic, that brought in the full totality of who they are. So, I'm not surprised. And with, Black LGBTQ people, we found all sorts of alternative ways, one of which is that we do have Black queer denominations. One is Unity Fellowship Church that has been around since the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, and it's a consequence of that. And what we're now seeing, particularly, I have to say your generation and younger, leading, it is a consequence of not expanding with the time. Kirk Franklin saved the church when they were about to lose his generation. So what is his generation? That's the beginning of hip-hop. It wasn't until they allowed hip-hop gospel to come in, and the kids, I call kids, but the young adults and the children come dressed as they wish to be, we would have lost more than we are now. The church is at a deadlock presently because it doesn't know what to do, not only with its LGBTQ population, but the push by more and more women to be in more higher rungs within the church and to challenge those scriptures that keep women in subordinate roles.
Thank you. And my last question is, as a woman of faith, how does faith help you navigate life as a Black woman?
Well, it centers me. I'm at the intersection of being not only Black, female, and LGBTQ, so there's an interlocking of oppressions that I have to deal with at any given moment here. And faith is that contemplative practice that centers me, that I am more than people denying my fullness. I'm more than people who are saying I'm an abomination to God, or that women should be subordinate to men here. So faith, it helps you, as we say, make a way out of no way. It helps you to see beyond yourself that there's something far greater than the strictures that are put before you. Faith is my love song. It's my inspiration. It's my great getting up morning. It's my guiding light to navigate through the world and to know that I'm not alone because I feel not only is God hearing me, but I'm hearing myself talk to God. And it allows me to say this, that my life is God's gift to me, but what I do with my life is my gift back to God, and prayer helps me to stay focused on that journey to do, as John Lewis said, good trouble in the world.
Thank you so much for your time today, Reverend Irene. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Special thanks again to Dr. TASHA Rose and Reverend Irene MONROE. Tune in to the next episode where we explore Black women and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Deidre Montague. Thanks for listening.